Hi there, on to our next video. So this video is for lab objective number 7, which is the inboard brake drum trainer. Several of you have done this one already, so a couple of things that we need to pay attention to. The, the rear brake trainer, the front axle trainer, they're what we would call the outboard drum, so I can take the wheel off and I can take the drum off without removing the hub. This one, as the name suggests, the drum is inboard of the hub. So if I want to replace brake shoes, if I want to replace the drum, you don't want to replace wheel bearings, I have to take the whole section off. This is heavy, all right? Several of you have worked on this one, so you know that this is definitely a two-person lift. When you're out in the workforce or in your lab, whatever, we do not try and take this by one person unless we have a hydraulic jack or floor jack with the appropriate adapter. If you're using by hands, it is a two-person lift, okay? Please be careful about that, guys. All right, so this is our hub. We have captive bearings, the outer bearing, inner bearing buried down there. We have our drum. I'll have Jason just move around this side. A couple of things about our drum. If you note right here, I have a series of notches. So this particular drum is one of the very first of our ABS systems. So this is actually off of a single axle Chevrolet, probably a C65, C75, single axle grain truck, for example. So this is one of our very first ones. These are machined into the drum. So when you take these off, be very, very careful. If you drop this drum and break it or ding it, whatever, I'm going to say this is way more expensive than our typical outboard drum. All right, so let's be careful about that. Everything else is pretty much the same. We have an air can, we have a slack adjuster. On the inside, we'll get to see it, we have an S-cam. We're held on by a couple of kind of funky little lock nuts here. So you'll note this lock nut does have a series of notches in it. And those notches are going to line up with my socket right here with the tang. So we're going to line up like so. All right? Like so. There we go. We can see that we're mating up here. This socket's rather spendy. I got 2 of these from CarQuest locally. They're about $80 a piece. Our issue is with repetitive use. You'll see how, I'll take my glove off here. You can see how we're getting very, very worn around the edges with repeated use. Now in the workforce, you're not going to be using it as often as what we do in lab. But be careful of these. Number one, they're expensive. These are not made of a good steel. I did have a good steel one that walked out the door. I'm going to try and find another one. I typically buy 2 of these every spring, and by the end of the spring they're shot. So that's pretty poor investment of our funds, all right? So I'll try and find a better version of this, but you can buy these just from your local parts jobber, okay? We do have 2. Okay, so we do have, these both exactly the same sizes, same thread. One is going to be your adjusting nut for your bearing, to set your bearing first travel, and then you have a lock nut, or sometimes it's called a jam nut, all right? So we're going to take a break and we're going to reconvene on the other end of this trainer. All right, welcome back. So in the essence of time, I have gone and disassembled this hub. There's one thing I want to show you about this hub. If you recall the other side of the trainer, our brake drum had notches on it for the ABS. This hub has a stamped steel ring on the inside, bolted to the inside. So I can see a whole bunch of notches right here. So that is going to be for my ABS system, all right? So the drum is gone. It would be sitting out here, would not have the notches on it. Okay, I'm going to slide this out of the way. Now we're going to talk a little about what we see going on under here. Here's our axle end. This component right here would be for our ABS. So as those notches on that stamped steel spin by here, we have that sine wave that we looked at in class for wheel speed. This is also what's called a closed anchor, a closed anchor or anchor pin brake shoe. So I can see right here, I do not have springs, as in the other ones we've worked on, but I have two anchor pins. I have one here and I have one here. So these are held in, there's a snap ring and a washer on each end. You can't see them, but there's one on the inside as well. On the other end, we still have our return spring, we still have our S-cam, we still have our rollers, okay? So what we're going to do now, I'm going to remove the rollers, then we'll remove the pins, and we'll take our brake shoes off, all right? So, and you've all done the rollers before. Just take your flat bar, pry bar, come underneath, we lift up, we take our rollers out. Again, be real careful when you're taking these rollers out. If this brake shoe slips off my bar, my fingers are in there, it's not gonna be pretty. And we'll do our bottom one, bottom down, take those out. So this takes tension off of the spring. It also takes tension off the back end. Okay, leave those there. Move our pointer stick. Take my gloves off to get these. So we'll take off our snap rings. One there. One there. All right. Let's talk about these first. We'll talk about them later. Let's just get them off because we've got some other things we need to talk about. Those off. All right, I'll get the inside ones. All right, we're good. Okay. All right, so we've got our pins or our snap rings off, we've got our washers off. Now we can just pop out the pins, hopefully. There's one. And there's two. Okay, that's all we're left with. So now you just handle those off, and here's our brake shoes. All right, let's have Jason come a little bit closer here. We've got a couple of things to talk about here. So, our pins. You can see that I have a notch, a little pointer, my notch right here. So when I go back in, that notch is going to line up with a bolt hole. So when we're in the other direction, like so, I would have a bolt in here that I'm going to torque down, and it's going to line up with that notch. What I don't want to happen is have the pin rotate, and I don't want to have the pin slide back and forth. I want that pin locked in tight. I want my brake shoes to rotate around the pin. Okay? If I start rotating the pin, I'm going to start wearing out this is called our spider. If I start wearing out that spider, I can see that there's no bushing in there. I could possibly re-bushing it, bore it out and put a bushing in, but essentially I'm going to have to replace this whole spider. Now that looked like quite an operation, it looked kind of spendy. So a cheap bolt in there worked just fine, all right? The other thing too, if I look at, so these are sitting on the end of our pin like so, and I'll note that I have a felt washer. The felt washer sits inside this stamped steel. The felt washer is basically our last line of defense to keep dirt, moisture, and crap out of here. I've never really worked on a whole lot of these, but I have talked to technicians that if I have that sitting in there and I do not have this felt washer, these will get seized in the bore and they are absolute bugger to get out. So several techs have told me when you go back together, we have our brakes on. We just put a really, really thin layer of anti-seize on here. So that when I put this in, wipe off my anti-seize, put my excess anti-seize, put my lock bolt in. The next person has to work on this, takes everything apart, and it's going to pop right out because I've had anti-seize. Okay? So, I think that's all we have to talk about on that. So we're going to go ahead and we'll try and put our brakes back on. Alright, so go. Okay, so see if I can get their pins in. They can sometimes cooperate, sometimes they won't. There's one. Another way. Alright, so now we'll just get a soft blow hammer and just gently tap it through what we need. Okay, so felt washer, retainer, and snap ring. Go. Through a little further. Felt washer. Actually, this one needs to come back just a little. Retainer. And snap ring. You know, we are missing a couple of washers here, so in the work, the job site, wherever the shop, you would have to get new washers for here, but obviously we don't have them. So we'll just put them on with that. We're not hitting the highway anytime soon, so we should be good. Snap ring and our last snap ring. There. Pretty straightforward. Now we'll put our rollers back in. Again, kind of be careful. You're working against spring pressure. And trust me, you do not want to get your fingers stuck in there. So, first one goes in. And second one goes in. All right, you've done that before in the other trainers, so we're good to go on those. Okay, so now you'll note I don't have the drum on here. However, this is still a two-person lift. This sucker is heavy, guys. I actually had Bruce come down and we took this off yesterday. So in the essence of time, and you've also been through this procedure before, we're not going to put the hub on. You know the process. We have first thing we would do is we'd spin these on and make sure that our threads are clear. Looks like that one's good. We can take that off, set a hub on. We do have captive bearings, so I can see my outer bearing sitting right here. Slide this on. We would torque this one down 200 foot-pounds while we're rotating the hub. Then we'll back it off 1 full turn. Then we'll torque this one down again 50 foot-pounds. Then we'd look at our chart. We do our final back off. And then same as what we've done on the other trainers, the rear axle and the front axle, we would measure the end play of our hub, all right? Spec is still the same, between 2/1000 and 5/1000 of an inch. Again, as you guys know, if we have 2 of these on here, I need to probably be 5, 6, maybe even 7/1000 of travel. Because when I go in and put my jam nut, or my lock nut on, torque that down to 250, 300 foot-pounds, I'm gonna lose some of that travel, okay? So torque this down, I would remeasure and make sure that I am between 2 and 5/1000 of an inch. All right, so you've been through that process. Let's make sure we get all that whole process listed out in our service report and dump it in the appropriate drop box. All right, thank you.